to be here tonight, and I'm happy to see that so many concerned citizens are looking at what's happening, what's going to affect you, your animals, your properties, your harvest, and to look at something a little more closely so that you can understand when tech companies are moving in close to your proximity. And so it's very hopeful to see everyone here. So I'm trained as an audio engineer in Toronto, and so for 10 years what I did was sound. It was all frequencies, live sound, electronics. That was my specialty. I moved out to Vancouver Island and was hired to do natural electromagnetic readings on an equestrian ranch. They were teaching kids about the natural EM field. So after a few years of doing that, it was very interesting. It was the mums of the kids at the camp saying, well, what about my cell phone? What about my... Is it echoing in here?
Just need it. They can't hear you very well.
Yeah, it sounds super echoey in my ears. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was the mums of the kids saying, what about my phone? And that got me looking into power lines, anything that generates or transmits or uses electricity has an electromagnetic field. That field interacts with the Earth's natural electromagnetic field. And I think that's where we'll just start, is right there. Inside, you can't really see that too good. Can we shut off one of these? No, it's at the back. So, the inside of the Earth, the Earth itself creates a geomagnetic field. And that field, any magnetic field, is created when there's electrical current. So somewhere in the planet, they're not really sure, is it the spinning iron ball or is it the tectonic plates? That current is creating a geomagnetic field on the planet. And that field comes up through our feet and resonates at a very low frequency, 7.83 hertz, a very low hum. And our biological being and everything on this planet, in every cell of our body, vibrates at 7.3 hertz. We are in resonance, we belong here. So for billions of years, the planet goes on 7.83 hertz. But in the last, 30 years, now we're up to billions of hertz, millions of hertz. The cell towers that they're talking about putting in here, 5G, is pretty high. So what we're doing is we're affecting that low hum, that is the natural vibration of us and the planet, and we have now introduced, like pollutants into a river, something foreign. And what its effect is going to be, nobody really knows. It hasn't been around long enough. There's a lot of studies on it right now. I'm not going to pretend I don't know. I don't. But what I do know is that 3.5 billion hertz is a lot. And we're not just talking about Creston, we're talking about every city and every country. And all of the carbon reduction plans are to increase electrification, increase wireless. So to someone like me who reads electromagnetic fields, that is a little alarming. So when the electromagnetic field of the Earth comes up at 7.83 hertz, that's why you feel good in your bare feet. It's not the dirt, it's not the sand. It's the magnetic field. All of a sudden, you're entrained and dragged right down to this low frequency that we enjoy. You feel good in the garden, the bare feet, all of it. So when this field extends into outer space, it keeps going and going and going, and ultimately, this is NASA's image of the magnetosphere. The magnetosphere is the Earth's electromagnetic field, or geomagnetic field, in outer space. So by the time it hits outer space, it is the only thing standing between us and solar wind, cosmic radiation. In other words, without it, we are Mars. For billions of years, the Earth and Mars soared through the universe with exactly the same atmosphere. All of a sudden, about 40,000 years ago, Mars's magnetosphere turned off. And now we see what happened to Mars, and that would have happened in a number of days. So the magnetosphere is key to our existence, and it starts in the ground here. So when we're talking about the geomagnetic field, it's not a local problem, it's not a national concern, it's global. There's only one field. There's nowhere on the planet that's not emanating at that same low frequency. So everything I talk about tonight with 5G is about frequency, it's about vibration, and it's about our relationship to the Earth itself and everything on it. So just a quick overview. The electromagnetic spectrum, energy is expressed as waveforms. Everything on the planet is a form of vibration. So if it's vibrating really slow, and this is just in a very small part of the spectrum, at the end there, you're going to have radio waves. Television, radio, they go a long way, they are very robust. You know, they'll go across mountains. And then you move it up a little bit into microwaves, which we all know what that is. That's what people are concerned about. You move a little closer, infrared. See how it's starting to speed up? Infrared radiation is what they heat up your food with in a restaurant. That's when heat starts coming into play. It goes faster, and then all of a sudden it hits visible light. The only reason we can see anything on the planet is that our eyes pick up those frequencies, what we call visible light. You speed it up a little more, and it goes into ultraviolet. So now it's into the sun. And then it gets faster and faster into X-rays, and finally into gamma rays, and those are way out in outer space. So these motions, all they're telling you is how many of those go by in a second. So in your house, 60 hertz literally means 60 of those little waves goes by every second. And that's the hum of your refrigerator. That's 60 hertz. So, next one. So that spectrum that I just showed you is parceled up by our government all over the world. Everyone's government parcels it up into what they call spectrum allocation. So they give everyone a channel for their radio station, and this is just Canada. This is how much they've parceled up our electromagnetic spectrum into sellable lots. So TELUS probably bought a little square here that they're using to run their towers. So as you can see, the spectrum is really busy. It's very, very busy what's happening out there in our field. And so there's already a ton of proliferation. And yet, if you look at Environment Canada, the geomagnetic field isn't even mentioned. And that's why it's not protected. It's not recognized, we don't know it's there, and when we don't know it's there, it's really easy to profit from it, divvy it up, slap up towers, and it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. And the reason it is that we don't have a good grasp of the part of the environment that we're affecting. Everybody keeps looking for how did it affect us. Well, we're pretty dense, and we rely on that field. Electromagnetic radiation is cumulative. It takes a while to build up in your body. So when I am considering electromagnetic energy, I see it as a field. It is a field, and those things interact. So if there's two towers in an area, they're going to interact in a way that we don't know. We don't understand it. Even a railway track going by is a conductive thing. A fence, another tower, a baby monitor. Everything is emanating on this field. So, next. So, what I do in my business now is I go out and I just read the field. I'm not for towers, I'm not against towers. I'm just really good at measuring man-made electromagnetic energy compared to natural electromagnetic energy. And one day there'll be more field readers. There's already quite a few, but it is an invisible field, so it is hard to promote as a part of our environment. Like I say, I cannot find it on any government site, the geomagnetic field. Up until now, we weren't really polluting it, but now we are. Now we've got to make it part of our consciousness, part of our laws, just like any mountain, river, or stream or the air, and start protecting it before we, make some mistakes that we don't know what we're doing. We literally don't. So there's 4 types of electrical pollution. The one that you're going to be concerned about with 5G towers are 2 of them. Of course, microwaves, and the other unseen impact of these cell towers is the high-frequency interference, or radio frequency interference. And what that means is that when those really high beams are being projected into your environment, they latch on to anything conductive. Every metal fence, every stovepipe, every circuit of wires in your house. And radio frequency doesn't go in the wire and travel around your house. It travels outside of the wire. And when it does that, it penetrates the wall and out into the room. And so what it sounds like is it's a static-key hash. On the type of equipment and meters that I'm using, you can get dozens and dozens of different frequencies roaring around your house on top of the 60 hertz. So we're no longer just living in 60 hertz. We're living in a radio frequency mess. And that is, in a lot of the scientific studies, where the health implications come in, is RF interference. And it's a very complicated topic, but it's quite easy to demonstrate with a proper equipment. So the 4 types of electrical pollution, like I said, anything that uses electricity or generates it or transmits it creates a big field. Microwaves are emitted from antennas and can be, all of the smart appliances in your home are going to be running microwaves. They're going to be talking to the smart meter, and the smart meter is going to be talking back to them. So again, there's all this crosstalk going on in your house of wireless microwave waves. Ground current is literally, that's more of a power line problem, so we won't really be looking at that, but that's a very serious effect on farm animals and productivity. And then the high frequency interference with dirty electricity. So with 5G, it's dirty electricity and it's microwaves up in the phone. So 5G itself, I'm just going to show a couple of quick slides of what happened over in Nelson. They have been running 5G since, I think, 2019. So it's not new, it's been here as well. There's 3 types of 5G. Low band, which has carry, a lot more information than 4G. This is what they want 5G for. We all want 5G for. Faster and can carry way more data. So the low band 5G is robust. It goes quite a long way. It's under 1 gigahertz. So that's a good wave. Mid-band, which is what we have in Nelson, is kind of a balance between the scary millimeter waves and the low band. Again, it's very robust, but you don't need that many towers. But it can carry a lot of information quickly. That's why everybody wants 5G. The millimeter waves is the one that sort of terrifies people, and that's because the waves are over 25 gigahertz, and that is an extremely fast wave, and now you're moving right up to the microwave oven or infrared area. Now it's not a radio frequency anymore, it's something else. And they know that 5G energy, any kind of wireless energy at that level, vibrates the atoms in your cell. So it doesn't heat them up, but it vibrates them in a very rapid manner. And how that's going to affect us, like I say, we don't know yet. So in Nelson, I took that picture in 2014. Now those are 4G towers. And then last year, that's the same tower, has now been loaded up with 5G technology, panels, and 4G. They just left those there, added the 5G. So what happens is with Industry Canada, they have a new name, Innovation, Science and Economic Development. I'll just say Industry Canada. So they are the ones who govern the towers. But once a tower is up, the telecom industries can add stuff to that tower. And it's almost like a self-regulated industry. It's, from my experience, I don't see Industry Canada measuring, okay, let's hit it. Like in Nelson, that tower is right across the road from these there's 6 of them, 5G towers on top of the building across the road. So they disguised them as smokestacks because they thought the citizens were going to get upset. Because all of this in Nelson is within 1 block. So they got that big giant TELUS thing, and there's no employees working in that building, I'll tell you, TELUS knew that. But across the road is the Ministry of Environment, and this is over some guy's desk. And they're right across this far away from the other big TELUS tower. So it's this very complicated scene. And a lot of citizens, we have made a lot of complaints to Industry Canada, as well as our MPs, but without the environmental protections due any natural resource, it's very easy for, Industry Canada say, no, everybody met their standards. Everybody met their standards. This guy is below the safety standards, this guy is at a certain power level, mine's okay. But what they never do is say, well, what happens when it's across the road from that other one? Are they bumping each other up? We know that frequencies affect each other radically. So that's the piece that's missing, is how did the one thing affect the other thing? And that these standards are not designed to protect the environment. So here's an example of a 5G tower. And this is called a 5G tower, that little thing. So it's a repeater tower, and you might even not know it's there outside of your house. But this is where the dirty electricity comes in, because this thing is sending out massive waves. They're not millimeter, but they're 350 million hertz. What happens is it emanates from this antenna, and then it comes down and rides on all these wires. And all those wires are leading to the little houses under the tower, directly. So when I go in and read the fields on those homes, it is absolutely ridiculous the number of frequencies riding on top of 60 hertz, and the resulting electromagnetic fields in the homes is just absurd. You don't have to wait years and years to get the health impacts from that. Health is not my specialty. I won't be going into too much health stuff. I can only say that after reading Fields in Nelson for 12 years, that it is severe, the headaches and the don't sleep, and it's pretty common. Whatever extra electricity would do to a person is kind of what it does, anxiety and all kinds of things. So that instead of, making that investment in the mitigation, there are really expensive line filters like cattle farmers use to keep their cows from dancing in high voltage in the ground. Those same filters can be applied across the circuit board of a house to block that kind of stuff. But as long as no one knows it exists, the companies are not investing. Like whoever paid for that tower should have paid for that little house to have a line filter. It's about $5,000. So it's expensive to filter that energy. It doesn't mean it's not beaming down on your house still. It just means that it's not riding crazy on your electricity. You filtered it. So now your technology lasts longer. It doesn't run as hot. You don't get static or brownouts. RF is really hard on equipment. It's not meant to operate on those frequencies. Different things cause dirty electricity, but this is the one we're concerned about here. So this is what Nelson looked like, that corner, in 2017. And the purple is what it looked like last year. So again, that's not just because they put in the 5G towers, it's because the 5G towers are now interacting with the TELUS towers that were already there. So that's not a small spike, that is a very incredible spike in energy for all the businesses and the offices in that area. And so, like I say, prolonged exposure to electromagnetic radiation, because that's what we're talking about here, even 60 hertz is a form of radiation. At this level, the citizens are not protected because the environment's not protected. And so of course we're not. We can't prove that it gave me the headache. It's kind of a soft science at first. Yep. This is a picture of what you've currently got in Preston, and I don't think it's complete. This is just what I could find online to show that Rogers and Telus have already installed towers in your downtown core, close. You know, that it sort of makes sense at first when they weren't as powerful. But to put a 5G tower, any of them I don't think was a good idea. They all belong up on the mountainside. But it's probably more expensive for the telecom industry to get the power levels up to push the signal all the way down in the valley when they can just plunk it on the roof of the rec center and nobody knows nothing. And the government says, yeah, no, there's no effects from this. And so Preston already has a bit of a proliferation in its downtown. Next one. And the proposed site, it looks like it's near honeybee farms, and I think there's other things out there that farms and homes and people. And again, why is it so close to the buildings? I'm not pro cell tower, I'm not against them, but I really feel like the placement of towers has been really irresponsible in terms of our exposure to those levels that are literally untested. Now, the fastest beams of the 5 millimeter waves, because those beams are moving so fast, they need to place a little repeater tower every 100, 200 meters. That's a lot of little towers. Even a tree in the way will interrupt the signal. So the chances of millimeter or high band 5G coming out to the rural communities, it's almost zero. Because the trees, the terrain, the weather, how can they even take care of those towers to make the signal? You know, there's so many. In the city, they can kind of pull their truck up to the power pole, climb up there and fix their tower. Out in the rural communities, they're going to be fixing and replacing towers in the middle of the bush. It's just not going to fly. So we probably will not get the millimeter wave technology that they're putting into the cities at this time for that reason. The signals are very easily interrupted, those little tiny waves. So this is another thing. I'm going to go quickly through here very quickly to show you again that when you're in rural communities, the other problem with having a cell tower in a rural community is that in Canada, we allow hydro and utility companies to use the ground as a return wire. So in electricity, you're supposed to have one with all the electricity going out and then the same big wire bringing it all back home into the substation. But that's expensive in rural communities, so Canada sort of crazily allowed hydro companies to just put it into the earth and it'll find its way home. So all over rural Canada, massive amounts of voltage, which is, it's coming off those lines and it's going to go right through everyone's property on its way back to the substation. And that, on its way to the substation, often passes through your house. So now you've got dirty electricity and high frequencies coming in on all the wires and the power lines, and now you've got all this stray voltage. It's not even stray, it knows where it's going, but it's going to go through your house first if it sees a copper pipe or a way in. It's going to take the path of least resistance on its way home. So this is another big problem, putting cell towers on rural properties anywhere near a power line, because now the ground is energized as well. And again, that is, we can talk about dirty electricity in your house, but there's also the land itself. That geomagnetic field is the thing we've really got to put into our minds as something that we must protect. Because this is a terrible, invisible, another form of just dumping. Use the earth as your natural, your own personal ground wire because you're Fortis or whatever company. It's happening because we don't recognize that part of our environment. So again, I'm not going to talk too much about health, but because Health Canada, who regulates the standards in Canada, has recognized, and the World Health Organization, they have recognized that some people suffer from electro hypersensitivity, and these are the kinds of things that would happen to them. So it looks like kind of an all-out, oh, I don't know, your skin, your breathing, all sorts of things. Like I say, I don't do anything in the health department, but the people that I've worked with, and when I do field readings, and it's basically a matter of furniture moving usually. Move your chair out of the way, get away from that wall, and now they sleep better. It's not rocket science. There's a big wave coming through here, and now I'm gonna go sit over here. Oh, I feel better. So it's not that it's gonna kill us all, no. But if we don't know it's there, you could be really not figuring out why you can't sleep anymore. And why are the kids fussing? And what is, what's this skin rash I keep getting? Oh, it's the stupid curly light bulb. Like the things that you might have gone to the doctor for, and then you find out later, oh, my big toe is numb because I had it on a subwoofer speaker for 6 months while I was on my computer. And the doctor can't fix that. I just have to take my foot off the damn speaker. So that is how subtle this is. Okay. The different countries have different exposure levels, and a lot of countries have set exposure levels much, much lower than ours. More strict rules. 1,000 microwatts per meter squared is doable. Canada's right now is actually, we're looking at centimeters squared, but when I'm talking about meters squared, other countries like Germany, China, Russia, they'll say 1,000 microwatts per meter squared is up. That's the legal limit. In Canada, it's 10 million. And so Canada says, don't you worry, we took our safety level, 10 million, and we cut it in half. So we're going 50% below the speed limit that we set that no one will ever break. And it just doesn't make sense. If it's 1,000, Russia and China have been, for a very long time, experts in electromagnetic everything. And so they don't screw around. They don't submit their people to anything more than 1,000 microwatts per meter squared. And like I say, Canada at this time is 10 million. And they will say to you, oh, okay, well, we're 50% below the level, so it's really only 5 million. Unacceptable. And again, when these laws were looked at in 2015, we didn't have 5G. So every time they bump up those levels, we should be rewriting those exposure laws. We should have some global standards, not, sort of willy-nilly, that there's such a discrepancy between countries. So what I want to say about this field, because this is an interesting part of our electromagnetic field, is that NASA has recently discovered that every cell in the human body has the capability to create, send, and receive oscillations at the same frequency as the magnetosphere. We can send information and receive it and respond to it somehow. So when science looks at our DNA and our cells and says, oh, that's a remnant, that's junk, and they actually call our cells that resonate at the 100 gigahertz, which is the magnetosphere, when they see it as merely as a remnant of some ancient navigational skill that we needed, I'm not buying it. I find it intriguing that the biggest shield around our planet, that we can directly communicate with it, and I don't know what that means, but it means we are in resonance with not just the Earth, but with the very thing that protects us as we soar through the cosmos. That's curious to me, and it's worth examining. And it is generated by the geomagnetic field. It's all one thing. And so I am hoping that in all of the 5G rollouts, certain things get people interested. Smart meters had people looking twice, and they should have. 5G is like that. There's more of a consciousness in the public's mind about that might not be good. And that is a good thing. Because in terms of the geomagnetic field, and it's probably the same with everything in nature, is that we're not looking only at our impact on it. Oh, that's our impact. I dumped it into the river and now it's this. No, I impacted that and I cut down the trees and I impacted it. No. The geomagnetic field is a relationship with people. It's a relationship. It's not us impacting it and just watching what it does. It is responding to us, and we are responding to it. It is very important to see it as a two-way communication with this thing. Not in a woo-woo kind of way, but in a way that says that every cell in your body is resonating with these things. And it's got to be integral to your health just based on that. We know that bees use it to navigate. We've got this sort of very tiny understanding of what it does for the very fine sonar for a bat. What it means to us, we've kind of lost its meaning. But it wasn't just so that we could walk from Africa up to Kazakhstan. I'm sure there's going to be more than just navigation. So when you are thinking of talking to TELUS about the 5G tower and to the government about increasing their standards and examining the field more carefully and making the geomagnetic field part of the environment, that's what everyone else can do. But because you're in a relationship with this thing, there's a lot you can do to reduce your footprint. Everyone here can make a huge difference. It'll be like learning to recycle. We learn to turn our Wi-Fi off at night. We learn not to charge the phone beside the bed. We learn to chuck out any wireless tech we don't need. Why is that blasting next to the baby's crib? Do you really need to hear him crying at 2.4 gigahertz next to his head? I don't know. Maybe not. It's a personal responsibility for all of us to look at our use of the tech. I love my cell phone. I'm not against towers. I'm not for them, I'm not against them. But I do measure fields, and I do understand that this is a relationship. So taking personal responsibility for your own electro pollution is extremely important part of this mix. Because if the government recognizes the geomagnetic field as a part of our environment, just like a tree, a mountain, a river, then we will learn to reduce our footprint. And if the climate action plan can only see increased electrification as some form of clean energy, they are dead wrong. And I don't think that any one body of science has the proof to show that all of this is safe. If you look at all the laws in Canada, it's very carefully worded to say, well, it's never been proven to be unsafe. Well, it's never proven to be safe either. And so you'll notice they never actually say that. When they say, well, that won't harm you, there's no proof to say it's bad. Well, there's no proof to say it's good either. And so when you're coming from the perspective of being involved in helping to shape a future or talk to your governments, a part of that is going to be and educate us what we can do better, just like recycling, just like everything that we've done. We don't dump stuff into the river from the tannery because we learned you don't do that. This is where we are now at, a critical point now in our development, where it matters what we do to this invisible field. And it might not be something we can see, and that's why it's been really easy to ignore. So everybody saw the big pipe pouring into the river and went, oh, that water is stinky and black, that can't be good. And then the fish floated up to the surface, so it's not good. So the problem with electromagnetic pollution and radiation is it is silent, it has no smell, it has no odor. It is going to be a global responsibility, because there is only one field, to recognize it, measure it, maintain it, and protect it with due diligence, just like any other part of the environment. And so what you can do, I've been with the Citizens for Safe Technology in Canada for 15 years now or more. And we spent a lot of time fighting against, for the smart meters. We started with that. And Health Canada standards and Industry Canada's ridiculous allowances. No, it never did anything. There's always going to be an expert who says, well, my tower was perfect. And I'm like, well, your tower is crammed up against another tower. Are you sure it's perfect? And there's a power line, and there's a railway track, and that's conductive. And so, no. So we really were we thought we were going to influence the government to change their trajectory, but we're talking about a telecom industry that is worth billions. So that didn't work out so well for us, so I wouldn't send you down that path. But I would do, it looks like the direction that you're doing, all grassroots movements are very powerful. So if a bunch of people who live near that tower show up with picket signs in their little local newspaper, that is going to rattle Rogers. Writing those letters, showing up to things like this, and asking for that, no, demanding that the citizens' concerns be heard, not from you're going to have a hard time if you're just coming from health perspectives. They're just going to keep going back to the Health Canada stuff. But if you're approaching the governments, a number of years ago, the Federation of Municipalities in Canada, Canadian Federation of Municipalities, created something called antenna siting protocols. And any city or land use authority can adopt those protocols so that when a company like TELUS or Fortis or Rogers rolls into your valley, they have to abide by the antenna siting protocols set by the city. In other words, you're not caught off guard with, we're going to put a tower up in 2 weeks and here's an address, just send your letter to. No. If the city has adopted, or the land use authority has adopted these protocols, they have to now ask permission from the city gets together, talk to the constituents, they'll set up their own protocols for antenna siting. And according to Industry Canada, the companies have to abide by whatever protocols have been adopted by Creston, by Nelson, and there are a lot of Canadian cities who have already adopted these protocols, and it gives them a thin layer of protection. It doesn't mean you're going to stop the tower, it just means that you might get it up on the mountain where it belonged, not next to the daycare or on the roof of the community center. That's absurd. But as long as the companies, when they come in, the laws of Industry Canada will clearly state, if the city has protocols, you've got to follow it. If they don't have protocols, you can default to your thing where you write the letter, you have everyone write back, you agree that you'll look for an alternative site, but if you can't find one, guess where that tower is going? So it's better to lobby, to have friends on the RDCK in the city and get them to adopt those protocols sooner than later, since they seem to be building a lot of towers here recently, and see if your municipality and regional government can set up that first one little line of defense that says, you know what, we said that no towers in our town can be within 1,000 meters of a school, a hospital, or a residential building. That's all. And once the city has adopted it, that is a law. So that's a power that's been, not a law, but a protocol that Industry Canada has directed companies to abide by. So I would, if I lived in any city, be pushing for that. And another thing that the Citizens for Safe Technology have been doing is adding clauses in their agreements with TELUS, a group like this with one letter that says, oh, and what are you going to do if people start getting sick? And how are we going to report that to you? And how are you going to respond? Are you going to pay for that? Is there insurance for that? And so those are the kinds of questions that put the companies a little bit more on awareness that the citizens are aware. So we don't have a lot that we can do, literally. But if the cities, the land use authorities come together with the idea that they can at least have some say in the siting of the tower, that's what you want to do. It's just where are you going to put it, not what's it going to be, but where. And in an agricultural community like this, I would imagine that none of you want interference on your farms or your homes or anything like that. So I think I'm going to open it up for questions here, but I just want to close with the very idea that we have a lot of power, and there are a lot of groups, and what we're moving towards is the environmental protection of the geomagnetic field, because its existence is not negotiable. It's there. They are divvying it up and allocating it for billions of dollars. How about throwing some of that money our way for research? How about throwing some money our way to put electrical filters on the homes and make that part of the clean energy plan? Not, now further electrify everything. 5G is a very integral part of smart cities, electric cars, 15-minute cities. It's the only way that so many things can talk together at once. That's why 5G is attractive. Everything can talk to everything. It's got some vulnerabilities for that very reason. It isn't clean. It is supposed to network everything together. But let's say you buy a device from, Indonesia, and it's now in your Internet of Things, and it's now talking to every 5G device in your network. But that thing is not secure. It doesn't have safety standards the same as our country. So that's a vulnerability in the 5G networking, is that not all devices are created equally. So it's not going to be this smooth rollout of everything talking, and you drove through an intersection and they saw your face and, looked at your license plate. And because that's the dream, is that everything is now trackable. So 5G makes everything highly trackable. Not a good thing, not a bad thing, but it relies on a ton and increase in electromagnetic energy in your environment. And it will definitely impact that field. So the next time you're standing there in your bare feet, 7.83 hertz, that thing is trying to talk to us, literally.